It's sorcery and witchcraft. It is. I think the more I look into medicine, the more I at the science, it's like it's trickery. It's very much trickery. That's the reason they confuse the hell out of everything. That's the reason most people don't look into it, because you get so lost by it all. The peer-reviewed articles alone, nobody knows who the peers are. Like who these people are, and they're basing it off of something that they were taught. And if you go all the way back to even before Jesus, and there's only one God. God created the heaven and the earth. But Greek and Romans, but Greeks predated Romans, they had all these deities. They worshipped all these false gods. Everything that, the Old Testament God said not to do. Like, don't worship false idols. Don't build golden calves. These are things you shouldn't do. And people I've heard throughout my life, and I've understood it at times, because people will say, well, I don't want anything to do with God. He just puts plagues on people. Well, in the Old Testament, he did. But you could look at God very much like a parent. He wants to keep you out of wickedness. And Jesus was God in flesh. And yet, even though the Old Testament was a lot of God striking down wickedness, in the New Testament, it was also an example of how God cures, God heals, God loves. So it's showing you that all-encompassing part of God, that God can strike society with plagues, but God can also heal, cure, and even raise the dead, because it's God. So if you go back to Greek mythology, which was long before Jesus, you could look at society that had all these different gods as very wicked. They were, doing everything they shouldn't do. And so going back, and the roots to something are very important. People have this idea like, well, even if it started there, that's not what we do today. Really? You think so? I'm not so sure about that. Because the roots of something, that you need to know where the roots come from. Because the roots can affect what the tree will produce. So that medical symbol I showed yesterday, there's one on one side that I showed yesterday, and then there's the other with the rod and the snake. So, and this says that caduceus is the traditional, which is the one with the two snakes, the one I showed yesterday. The caduceus is the traditional emblem of the Greek god Hermes, messenger of the gods, equivalent to Roman Mercury. He is the patron of thieves, merchants, and travelers. Then the other one, which was this one I just showed with the rod, but it's one snake. The rod of I can't say this word. I know it's hard to pronounce. Asclepius. The rod of Asclepius is the symbol of Asclepius. That's the symbol of Asclepius. It's the Greek Roman god of healing and medicine. This is the correct symbol of medicine, featuring a single snake wrapped around a staff. The staff may symbolize authority, and the snake symbolizes rebirth, healing, and rejuvenation. Now, just personally speaking, snakes don't symbolize any of that to me. Rejuvenation, rebirth, healing. But then there's some that say a snake will eat itself, and as it eats itself, it regenerates. All of this just sounds wicked to me. Just my opinion. But this is the correct symbol of medicine today. And I've seen that. So it goes back to these deities, and Asclepius is the god of medicine. And Hippocrates, he was considered the father of medicine. And I had said yesterday that this was his real name. It's not that this was his real name, but he's the face, he's the Hippocratic oath of this god, Asclepius, who's the god of medicine, the god of medicine. And because the Hippocratic oath goes back to Hippocrates, I can't say his name, but he was really considered the first physician. And Asclepius, this god who wasn't a person, who was just a god of medicine. Here's some interesting pictures of him. You have the rod with snake, all the pictures with him with these snakes. This is a picture of him with his daughter. This is all the Greek mythology. And this is Asclepius. This, in Greek mythology, is the god of medicine. Asclepius was the god of medicine and was the son of Apollo, the god of healing. And again, about the snake, it's about rejuvenation. And Asclepius is a Greek Roman god. So the very medicine, what my point is here, that goes back to, and that doctors take their oath under, Hippocratic oath, is rooted in Greek mythology. That's why I say witchery, sorcery. Not that all the people that are scientists and doctors and all of that are bad people, of course not. But if they've just always believed what they were taught, because it's always, you're told this is the expert. And really, expert doesn't mean they solve anything. So we shouldn't use that word. We should maybe put a new definition on expert and say that in order for you to really be an expert, you have to solve problems. Because I think most of us look at somebody who's an expert because they solve problems. No, really, and the definition of expert is just that you have all this education. But science does not solve anything. Science, if you really look at it, what does it solve? It doesn't. It has solved very little. It serves big pharma. It treats symptoms. And it would make sense because the very root, whatever the root is going to produce the fruit. And if the root is rotten, then the fruit's going to be rotten. And the roots of medicine are in something that's rotten, which is why we have more diseases, we have more viruses, we have more illnesses, we have really no cures, because cures would not serve big pharma. And all your Greek mythology gods, that man will worship everything but the true God, because if you try to follow the example of Jesus or what the true God's teachings are, it means that you shouldn't be hoarding money, you shouldn't be walking in wickedness. And since much of man falls, wants to do their own thing, and gets in this world and starts caring more about money and lust and power and all of that stuff, in order to justify that to themselves, they just start, making up their own gods, which just totally proves the Old Testament too to me. Not that I needed proof of it, but why God said, do not build false idols, do not worship, golden calves. This is wickedness. Well, our very medicine is rooted in wickedness. So even though not every doctor or scientist is, the roots of it are rotten. So what it produces isn't solutions. That's why everything it produces, there's no cures. Because it never wanted any cures. Rockefeller. Everybody's heard of the Rockefeller family. So Rockefeller, He created the American Cancer Society, which was founded in 1913. Really, he controlled the medicine. The Rockefeller family gave $1 billion in charitable donations to medicine. Well, you know what happens when you give money to medicine or science? You get to have some control over that. And I think that most people today realize the Rockefellers aren't quite what we were taught they were. And Rockefeller, John Rockefeller's father, used to make a living selling snake oil. And he would introduce himself as Dr. Bill Livingston, snake oil salesman. In 1939, an alliance was formed between the Rockefeller Empire and a German chemical company, and it was used to create chemicals for the military-industrial complex. And then that ended, but really, that's why there's all these shell companies, and it's so hard to find anything with these people, because they do everything under, like BlackRock, and then BlackRock trying to find the roots. This is just roots of evil and voodoo and sorcery. It's wicked. It is. And the corporations are wicked because the roots are in soil of wickedness. You could almost, and I don't mean this against doctors, because I think that many of them have good intentions, but they don't know that what they're serving is something that isn't so great. Really, they're like charlatans. They're and most doctors, not all, but most science, they're atheists. Like, even though most science will not deny God, they leave it out because, you'd have to actually have a relationship with God in order to start, they want to place God in a certain place and then say, well, this is evidence. Well, no, there's everything, all of their evidence, we don't know that it's evidence. You're told that on TV, so you're supposed to believe it. And they complicate the hell out of everything. That's why every peer-reviewed journal or article I've ever read, I'm like, why? They're not, all they're doing is saying this is the new problem. Okay, so the experts in medicine, in science, are good at coming up with problems. That's what they do. They come up with problems. But not solutions. Where's the solutions? If we're going to just have more diseases and viruses, I would think that we should just get rid of science altogether, because it's the very thing that's created all the problems to begin with, because it's rooted in something wicked. And there's some family or some corporation or somebody that, has all the money and power that controls it to make sure that certain things are not revealed, such as peer-reviewed articles. Okay, this is where they get their whole idea of experts. Peer-reviewed has been defined as a process of subjecting an author's scholarly work, research, or ideas to the scrutiny of others who are experts in the same field. It functions to encourage authors to meet the accepted high standards of their discipline and to control the dissemination of research data to ensure that unwarranted claims, unacceptable interpretations, or personal views are not published without prior expert review. Despite its widespread use by most journals, the peer-reviewed process has also been widely criticized due to the slowness of the process to publish new findings and due to their perceived bias by the editors and or reviewers. Within the scientific community, peer review has become an essential component of the academic writing process. It helps ensure that papers published in scientific journals answer meaningful research questions and draw accurate conclusions based on professionally executed experimentation. So, I mean, they're saying right there in the accepted high standards of their discipline and to control dissemination of research data. So, see, and this idea that I think it would be very hard to not have a personal view on something, you know? I mean, and what they say here about despite its widespread use by most journals, the peer review process has also been widely criticized due to the slowness of the process to publish new findings and perceived bias by the editors and reviewers. There's always going to be bias. I mean, I'm not trying to like talk racism. I'm just saying that this idea that these are experts because I understand, yeah, they have all these different people in their same field read this and they peer review it before publishing it to decide if this is evidence-based, but really they should just release everything and let all of us decide. See, what my point is they've complicated the hell out of everything. Science has complicated itself. And so that's why people don't investigate or look into anything, because you get too lost. And so it's just like, well, forget it. I guess, they're really way smarter than me. Well, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, I think there's a lot of ethical good scientists, and their papers probably never get published because the very people that are peer reviewing them follow their own biases. See, nobody is without bias, really. So if you have the top of a chain that wants to control something not getting out, say like a cure or something that's discovered, or you find out that really it was the science itself that created cancer, then and you didn't want that to get out into the public so that the science good name would be protected, then you would make sure that you have people in the peer-reviewed population that were going to strictly adhere to certain standards that would make sure those things weren't told to the public. It's witchery, it's sorcery. It all goes back to Greek mythology, which means the very roots of science and medicine were started in something that was not with the true God, the creator of this world, which means the fruit that it will produce will be spoiled.